Welcome back to another amazing episode of Winning the Moment. Today is amazing. If you love America, this episode's for you. We talk about the history and some really exciting things that are taking place, an amazing educational program for our youth in America, and especially here in Washington County. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned till the end. I know you're going to love this one. Well, let's get started. You ready?
Yeah, of course.
Wherever you are and however you are listening, thank you for being back with us on another episode of Winning the Moment. I promised in season 2, we're going to bring some interesting people and have some interesting conversations, and today we're going to deliver. I've got an awesome guest with me. His name is Dennis Leavitt, and he is the CEO of United We Pledge in Liberty Village, Utah. Dennis, thanks for being here.
Gosh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to a conversation. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it. So you, were you born and raised in St. George, or?
Yeah, raised in St. George for sure. Back in the day, Dixie High School was the only show in town. So
yeah.
I'm an old guy to the point that, it's a one high school town and a one stoplight town when I grew up here. But
I remember
things have changed a lot.
I remember when I moved here, our realtor told us, like, believe it or not that long ago, we only had one stoplight. It's hard to imagine that to be true today.
St. George is a dynamic place, a fun place to live. We welcome all the growth, of course. We kind of say, if you come, keep it magical here, because we've got a little slice of heaven, if you know what I mean. And we welcome everyone to come and enjoy that slice with us, but don't ruin it by getting
keep
here.
It magic.
Let's not try and change it. We all came for a reason. Let's keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I also went to Dixie High School, so I bleed blue with you there. In fact, I was the last class to go into the old school. So my junior year, we were still in the old high school, and then we're the first class in the new one. So
yeah, fun.
It was cool to be in a school that had all that history, Yeah,
so we have a long history here in southern Utah. All of our children live here now. We have 4 children. They all reside here and work here. Our grandchildren are close, so Sunday dinners at our house feel like a zoo.
How many people you got over there at the house?
So like 16 of us, all together on Sundays as a general rule.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'm curious. I want to talk about United We Pledge in Liberty Village. I think patriotism is coming back in a real way, and I think you guys are helping do some of that. And I just recently, about a month ago, I was in Philadelphia.
Great.
I wasn't there for very long, but I did get down, and I got to see the Liberty Bell and the Benjamin Franklin statue, and of course the Rocky statue. And I didn't get to do as much as I wanted because I was there for talks, but I at least made my way down there and got into it. And I had heard, because my day job's hospitality, so I knew Liberty Village was coming. And so I'd love to. We'll jump into that in a bit. But I'm curious how you got to the place you did in business, because as I was doing the research for you today, you were the COO of Squatty Potty. So Squatty Potty, one of the most nationally recognized brands in southern Utah. Shark Tank.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and then also the VP of Balance of Nature, which is massive. I mean, Balance of Nature is everywhere. You hear about it all over the place. And so I wonder kind of what your business experience looked like to take you to a place where you're able to be in such pivotal roles for really nationally recognized companies, and the luxury of getting to do that while staying in southern Utah.
Yeah. Let's call those luck, right? I had a degree in political science from Brigham Young University, had some business background. I actually taught for a number of years, written a dozen or so books, done some curriculum writing for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that kind of background always caused me to want to explore and, use my entrepreneurial kind of vision and view.
Yeah.
And with that wide background, got introduced to and had a chance to start at a local company called Bosch, actually. It's an international company, but their headquarters for their kitchen division is here. Okay. So I started off as a general manager of Bosch, headhunted by Squatty Potty, headhunted by Balance of Nature, basically, and it's been a fun journey.
Wow.
Those are great companies. Love them, love the experience there, and it's been fun. It's been a fun ride.
Bosch, like B-O-S-C-H?
B-O-S-C-H, right?
Yeah, I know
that. The German
that.
company.
Yeah,
they
I know
do
that
everything
brand.
from spark plugs to aeronautics, aerospace. But their kitchen machines is the company, the division that I worked for.
So you got your degree in political science. So when you were going to school and getting that degree, what was your aspiration with that? What did you want to get into?
Well, you know how it is when you're going through school. You always think, this is where I'm going.
Sure.
And then life takes you a different direction. I wanted to be a city manager, actually. There was a guy in town named Gary Esplin. And growing up, I thought,
I know the name.
I'm going to have his job one day. But then I got bit by the teaching bug and started to teach. That was while I was in Provo, getting my degree.
Okay.
I taught at a place called the Missionary Training Center. Fell in love with teaching. Started teaching religion full time, writing books on the side, and then doing some entrepreneurial side hustles like every good teacher does, right?
Yeah.
Just to kind of keep bread on the table, et cetera, et cetera. And then that skill set led me to an offer and some consideration of moving away from teaching full time and going into the business world.
Wow. So what was your side hustles back then that spurred you into those bigger opportunities?
My first side hustle was a little hotel gift shop in the Perry Hotel in Salt Lake City, Utah. Did some real estate kind of, spec house kinds of things. I've done a stint.
So you had a gift shop in the Perry Hotel?
Yeah.
That's
things.
that I know that hotel well because they're actually a part of Hilton now. They're a Tapestry, and that hotel's been there for I think over 100 years, right?
Yeah. So it was back in the day before it was bought by Hilton.
Yeah.
Just when it was a little
independent.
Independent. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. So we had a little gift shop there. Did selling things here and there on the side, but I also started this tour kind of company. Just started leading tours as a hobby and a side hustle in some ways.
Oh, so that's the tour thing that you did for the 25 years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So like any good teacher, been doing a lot of things on the side for a long time. And then in 2012 is when the opportunity came with Bosch. And I took that opportunity full time, and it's opened some doors for some really great things for me.
Yeah, no kidding. So when you were teaching religion is what you were teaching? So at the training center, and then where else did you say?
Taught in Provo, taught in Salt Lake City, taught here in St. George, and then wrote curriculum for seminaries and institutes, it's called, based in Salt Lake City.
And so
a long career. I'm old. I know you can't tell by looking at me, but I've had a lot of different opportunities in my life.
I think that's what's so cool about life is that you think when you're younger, kind of your point earlier, that you're going to just do this thing, but life ends up being so much different than that. Like I was just barely giving a talk in Colorado this week about winning the moment. And one of the exercises I have the people in the workshop go through is to determine their why. And I tell them, I say, look, you got to have a why because it's really important because you're not going to be able to keep promises to yourself if you don't, but also give yourself the grace that your why is going to evolve. Like my why today didn't even exist 3 years ago. It wouldn't have even been on the radar for me, So just because you're writing it down today doesn't mean it's going to be your why forever. But you do need to know what it is. And the word I would use is the universe. You got to let the universe know what you want because how are they supposed to help get you there if you've never told anyone where you're headed?
I love that. I love that.
What's the thing you're in pursuit of? So interesting about I find history and religious history very interesting. And so as all that you were teaching, was it LDS religious history?
Yeah, that's right. That's
okay.
Exactly right.
And so you had said you went to Israel 5 times. So what was that experience like? I would love to go back to that area and see where all of this started.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Now, it's a hub for major world religions, not just Christianity.
Yeah, no, right.
And that's one thing that makes Israel so magical for me, is it brings such a melting pot of people and thought and ideas. It's visually like the most incredible thing I've ever seen on planet Earth is just the visualness of being in Jerusalem with all of the different people and the cultures and the sights and sounds and smells and feel. It's very fun. But for me personally, of course, it's a sacred experience. There's some deep religious beliefs that I have, and they center around Christianity, of course. And to be in the places where I would say Jesus walked, or candidly, 50 feet or dozens of feet above where he walked, right? There's excavations to get down to the pavement that he would have been on, or the path that he would have been on, which has been built up over time. But it's still a really sacred moment to stand at the Wailing Wall and watch our Jewish friends who just are so committed to their religious faith, and to see them, and then to see the call for prayer from our Muslim friends who every day are just so devoted to their religious routines and their commitment to their God. All of those things, to see it in real life in Israel, where people of the highest devotion make their day-to-day walk and talk, I love Israel a lot.
So you mentioned you have 4 kids, right?
Yes.
So have your kids had a chance to go there with you?
2 of them have.
2 of them have.
The other 2 haven't yet.
Do you have any plans to go back again?
Right now, no.
Of course,
we'll,
yeah.
we'll watch and see how it plays.
Yeah.
But of course, before this journey of life's over, I'm sure I'll be in Israel again.
Yeah, I'm sure you want to be able to share that with all of your kids.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you were doing your research and teaching, did you also then study all the other religions as well?
Don't make me an expert on the other religions, but enough to just explore.
So
and
you
make
understand
sure
it.
that I understand.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anything that stuck out to you in that process of learning about the other religions?
I actually believe that most of the human race are really, really good people.
Yeah.
Right. We all have some commonalities or threads that connect us and link us together. I think there's more commonality in religion than we sometimes think from an outsider's view looking in. But we're certainly full of churches around the world where people are trying to worship, protect and preserve their families, and do good things for our fellow beings. That's very common amongst all, people of all faith, and I appreciate the goodness that they bring. So I've become more accustomed to being an optimist when it comes to my worldview and when it comes to my religious view, that I'm really just happy with being able to be here and share the world with people of lots of different ideas and faiths and beliefs.
There was a study that came out that said optimistic people are generally happier. So it's like, if you could choose to be an optimist, why not? It's going to just naturally lead to you being happier. I think what's interesting about what you said is I think it's true about religion, and it's also just true about individuals, generally speaking, right? So we just had an election, and so there was a lot of stuff going on both sides. But if you removed the label and said, okay, you're not a Democrat, you're not a Republican, you're just a person, and you had a conversation, there's a lot of commonality there. But it's when you get labels that then sometimes you can't see what the other person is saying for what they're saying.
No, that's such an important part of who we are in terms of our nonprofit 501c3s, and we'll get into that a little bit, I'm guessing. But we are nonpartisan and non-denominational, and we really mean it. Some people think, oh, you're just saying that, and the answer is no, we're not. We really believe in this idea of nonpartisanship, that the labels are dangerous, and that our youth who come to learn anywhere ought to not be, we would see indoctrination as only having one worldview and having that taught to you exclusively without being immersed in or an opportunity to see and explore other worldviews. We're not about indoctrination. We're about information. Give everybody valuable, accurate, historically verifiable information, right? If I'm buying a Ford truck, I don't want to go to a Dodge dealer and have them tell me how bad that truck is. I want to go to the people who know, are the experts on that particular topic, and let them be the voice of and the spokespeople for that topic. So when I say verifiable history or verifiable things, I don't want somebody's anti-view on anything. I want the positive view from the people who live in that world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. That's great to hear. I didn't actually know that. And we will get into it. I got to share a story with you since we've touched on religion. So in my, throughout the course of my keynote, I talk about the universe. I talked a little bit about how I was talking about why the group I was with needs to have their why. And in this conversation about the universe, I'm saying the universe wants everything that we want for ourselves. You just got to be vocal about what it is that you want. And so I did my first keynote a couple of years ago. And so my wife and my daughter and my son got to come to it. At the time, my son, I can't remember, he's 6 or 7. I can't remember. But so I give my talk and I have a slide about the universe and I give my spiel. And then later that night, we're at the house and I'm in the kitchen doing dishes and he's, 20 or 15 feet across from me on the couch. And he peeks his head up. He turns around and he says, "Hey, Dad, why did you call it the universe?" I said, "Well, that's just what I believe."
Yeah.
He goes, "Yeah, but you're talking about God." And I was like, wow, because we're not a religious household. We don't go to church. That's just not a part of our lives. And so here's this 6 or 7-year-old who instinctively and intuitively is like, no, that's what you're saying. And I don't disagree with him. I'm just using a different word, but I think we're all saying the same things. We just see things differently. And I found that to be, so I share that in all of my workshops now, because I want people to understand when I'm saying it, they may have a particular belief and I'm not opposing it. I'm just saying, change the word to whatever makes sense for you, but to have someone of his age who hasn't been indoctrinated in anything to just instinctually see it as that, I thought was pretty profound.
Yeah, that's very cool. Love that story.
Yeah. And for Christmas, he asked for a necklace of Jesus on the cross. That's what he wanted. And again, that's not coming from us. That's just what he wanted. So it's been really fascinating. So I feel like I need to find the right way to give him that thing he's looking for. And I just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah. And as a parent, to be open to and to support him in that way.
Yeah.
And to recognize that your duty as a parent is to help instruct and teach and lead and open up opportunities. I would see it as this thing called agency, right? Everyone deserves agency.
Yeah.
And that would be my kind of religious preference word is agency. My professional preference word is liberty.
Yeah.
Liberty is critical. We all crave the freedom to choose and to act and to do the things that we want to do. It's what makes this nation so spectacular.
That's what I was going to say. That's what makes America great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a place where the American dream, that dream we all have innately to be free and have liberation and ability to choose. Now, that doesn't disregard the fact that we have to be accountable for our choices, and there's laws law here and all of that. But good for you being a parent who allows for that kind of choice and is supportive in that way. I think that's beautiful.
Well, and it's been great because so we also, at the end of our workshop, we go over the 5 F's that I think are really imperative to living the best life that you can. And number one is faith. And so I tell people, my faith may not be the same as yours, but it's where are you on your faith spectrum based on what you want to believe and where you live on a scale of 1 to 10, where does faith fall for you? And I think my son's perspective helps open people up to think about that in a different way. And I sometimes will come across people who say, oh, I don't have faith at all. And I think that no matter what, you believe in something. They just, I think, are maybe thinking about their traditional sense of, I don't go to church, so I don't have faith. But you got faith. It just might be called something different. You may pursue it in a different way, but you got to have faith one way or the other. You got to believe in something.
It's an action word, right? It's this thing that causes us to get out of bed every day or even flip on a light switch, right? Just this confidence and trust that I have to do something. Yeah, I've got to be engaged.
So it's been really fun to kind of watch different people struggle. And in fact, I was in Vermont. And so the first day I had 2 talks that on this trip. And the first day, people really struggled with the faith thing, and it kind of it derailed the conversation a little bit, and we kind of got off and we pulled it back together, and the chair came up to me after. She said, hey, I don't want today to deter you from continuing to have that conversation. It's important, and keep doing it. And so I thought that was pretty cool too.
Tell me your other 4 F words, because at United We Pledge in Liberty Village, we use 3 F words.
Oh, you do?
We use freedom, family, and faith as kind of the core hub of what we do.
So mine are faith, fitness, finances, family, and focus.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I love the finance thing. I love
and why I like it is so you fill out this sheet of 1 to 10, right? And then ultimately it's going to give you your operating capacity, so you can kind of see where you're at. And I would say typically for the room of CEOs I work with, the number is usually about 62. It's kind of where they come in. And I say, we're not living to be at 100% because that's impossible. And what's nice about the visual, because it has the faith and you've got your 10 bubbles and you're coloring them in, is that sometimes if you want more time with family, something might have to come back. Like if you're at a 10 at fitness and a 7 on family, you might have to move your fitness down to an 8 and your family up to 8. You can't necessarily just always add. I start every talk saying 86,400, 1,440, and 24, because those are the seconds, minutes, and hours in a day. And we all experience time exactly the same. No one can experience time differently. The only thing that we're in control of is how we use that time. And so when we get to the end, we're ultimately brought back to that time equation, because you're not going to be at 100%. Because as you see those pillars, sometimes you got to push and pull. You can't necessarily just increase everything. And I think it gives people grace to realize okay, I can't be perfect at everything. So where's my balance? And I tell people, I think 80 is generally the sweet spot, but you may find for yourself, no, I'm the happiest at 70. That's where I feel the most balance. And some people, they might be the happiest at 95, and they're their own critic and their own judge. So depending on how harsh they are about their expectations of themselves, their number may sway too. But it's a great way to give people an understanding of where they're at and kind of rescore themselves quarterly and see how are they aligning to where they want to be?
Yeah, you know what's happening on this podcast so far?
I know.
Your guest is sitting here going, I got to go to one of your presentations all of a sudden. I got to read your stuff. Yeah, I love what you're talking about. You've got me hooked.
That's wonderful.
With your passion and ideas. I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. Well, now that kind of sets the segue because I want to learn about United We Pledge and Liberty Village. So I'll tell you what I do know. I just know that there is a Liberty Village. Is it in Alabama?
It's called the American Village in Alabama.
Okay.
That's right.
And it's all like historical sites, and you can go and kind of experience some of those things. That's the limited knowledge that I have, and I know you guys plan to bring it to Hurricane, Utah, and I believe you've raised like $22 million already.
We're over $30 million actually.
That is unbelievable. And I think if what I know of your guys' efforts to be true, I think it's so imperative because somehow we got so off track, like as a nation, and like there's people who say the American flag like triggers them, and it's like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah, other than triggering you in a good way to say what gratitude I feel for the place that I live and how I can bless and help and serve other people. That's what it should.
And I even had a friend. We got into it, and I said, "Do you not think this is the best place in the world to live?" And he said, no. And I was like, "Well, then that's not true because you wouldn't live here. Like you have autonomy. So if you really believed there was a better place to live, you would live there because that's the kind of person you are. Like you're not stuck to circumstance." And I couldn't even believe that this person who had grown up here had got to a place where he didn't think this was the best place in the world. And that doesn't mean that we're perfect, right?
Oh no, of course.
But we are certainly the best place in the world. And there's so many amazing things that we've done. And I grew up with this pride in America and like the Olympics and just all of it, and all of these accomplishments. And I feel like somehow along the way, like that kind of got lost. And there's some revisionist history taking place. And so, in fact, my son, who's now 8, he's going through like civic studies in school. Yeah. And so I let him watch The Patriot with me a couple weeks ago. And it was awesome to see him watch that and get to like realize how much we fought for what we have, and that it wasn't given to us, and we need to be thankful for all those things. So that kind of sets the table for what I know.
And I would just interject one thing from what
please.
You're saying. American, right? It's not a culture. It's a choice. We choose to be American.
Yeah.
In other countries, it feels like sometimes I'm born with that culture. I'm born there. But this American ideal and this feeling of pride and gratitude for who we are and what we have, again, it's a citizen by choice in some ways, if that makes sense. I agree with what you said about your friend. If you don't believe that, gosh, why? Anyway, I don't mean to sound negative anyway.
It's not negative. It's just the truth. Like if you didn't like pizza, you wouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
I think there's a senator, and maybe you can correct me. I think his name is Tim Scott. And I got to see him talk, and if I'm getting his wrong name, I apologize. But his grandfather was a slave, and now he's a senator. And that to me is the coolest thing in the whole world, because that's just 2 generations removed from being completely impoverished and being under slavery to being a leader of our nation. And I don't think there's anywhere in the world that you could transcend your life so much in 2 generations.
And certainly the founders of this nation were under tyrannical rule, where only the elite class had those kind of opportunities.
Right.
And the establishment of this nation and the standing up for and declaring our independence literally was about that idea of the American dream. We want to own land. We want to, if we work hard, we want to be the benefactors of that.
Yeah.
We want the liberties and the freedoms that allow us to live our dream and become who we want to become. That's what drove those early patriots, for sure.
Well, and I think when you look at that, that's where I get so lost to think that we're not this amazing place. I mean, there's nowhere else in the world because there's still slaves in other places of the world, and none of those slaves' grandchildren are going to be leaders of wherever they are. Yeah. It just doesn't move like that. Yeah. And that's, I think, what sets America apart.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, so let's learn about it. So tell me about, I don't know where you want to start. They're both 501c3s. Is United We Pledge? You want to start there, or do you want to talk about Liberty Village?
What if we start with just United We Pledge? It's a local focused organization. It's what we would call our outreach program. And it's actually, I want to start there because that's where the story started. Okay. So I was the vice president of public relations at Balance of Nature. Lex Howard, who's the CEO of Balance of Nature, a really outgoing, great, relatively young guy who bought his father's business. His founder, Dr. Douglas Howard, founded the business I don't know, I'll make this number up, but call it 25 or 30 years ago or something. And then Lex bought the business from his father. In doing so, he had to make a lot of trips back and forth to New York. He served an LDS mission in Chicago. He grew up for a short window of time. Their family went back to Russia when the wall was up, so to speak, and communism was at an all-time high. He had a lot of viewpoints that were kind of infiltrated into his life.
And why did they go to Russia?
Study medicine. His dad studied medicine and wanted his children to have an experience behind the Iron Curtain and see that part of life. Kind of this dad who really believed in, let's give our children experiences. He had siblings who worked in kibbutz, and Israel is part of their growing up. Anyway, their family story is kind of an interesting one in terms of this freedom and liberty and expression, self-expression. But Lex came to me one day and he said, I really want to do something significant and important. I've been on enough airplanes talking. I grew up in a very Republican county, a very Republican city, but I'm traveling back and forth and having delightful conversations with Democrats, and he has the same view that I expressed, that people in the world are really good, and if we can take away labels, we can make a lot of headway and a lot of progress. So he came and said, we want to do something really good to help educate youth. He has 7 children. Back at the time, I think he had 5 children. And he said, I really love this nation. And I think that there's not only half of us who are good because we belong to one political party. So I want to start making a statement and a difference to help patriotism be reignited, and I want to do something good for kids. So then I put my PR hat on and go, okay, what do we do? How do we kind of handle that in a really positive way?
Yeah.
Events is the best thing I could think of, right? Celebrations and events that are patriotic focused often involve youth and families, and it's those feel good moments. So I went to
even like the rodeo when they bring in the lady on the flag with America, and it's like your tears well up, and it's just like and the firefighters and the police, and you're just so proud, to be a part of that and experiencing that with everyone.
So Canyon Media does one of the largest 4th of July shows, in southern Utah. It's a long-running, multi-decade tradition. So we went to Canyon Media and said, we formed this organization called United We Pledge, and we set our goal as freedom, family, and faith, and we want to do all things good for kids and all things good for patriotism. So can we be a sponsor of that particular event? They said, sure. And I said, no, we're going to go all in. We want to be an all-in sponsor because it's a great fireworks show and it's a great concert. But we want to have a Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer. We want to honor veterans. We want to have the flag. Independence Day is literally about the birthday of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It's not about hot dogs and fireworks and watermelon.
Yeah, right. It's about 1776.
And most Americans don't even really know that or get that. It's kind of lost on people.
Yeah.
So we became the title sponsor for that event as our first thing out of the chute for United We Pledge. We brought in Gail Halverson, the candy bomber. I don't know if you know his story, but one of the great Americans, a heroic guy who during World War II started handing out candy, to the children of Germany to bring smiles to their faces.
I think I have heard that story.
He became known as the candy bomber. So we did his last candy drop as a 100-year-old veteran out of a helicopter flying over the stadium at Utah Tech.
That's amazing.
It was cool. We unveiled the largest flag that's ever been flown, the free-flying flag in the United States. And the national anthem was fantastic. We brought up veterans from every one of the veterans organizations up on stage and gave them an honor. And all of a sudden, we got bit by this bug that said, it feels good. And the feedback was so positive, and the youth's eyes and what they saw. So that was the start of United We Pledge, but we knew it was always going to be an educational play, right? You're only going to help the next generation if you teach the next generation.
Yeah.
And with my teaching background, I'm all in on that. So it was comfortable for me. I knew what education's about. I can speak the language of youth, the language of kids. And I knew that if we could do events and link it with education, that we would have some magical moments to really help this area in this county. So United We Pledge was born as a 501c3. We've been event-focused for a number of years, and now recently have really gotten into the educational experience. So we're I wouldn't say partnered with Washington County Schools, but certainly the Washington County School District has endorsed us. The superintendent has endorsed us. The school board approves of everything that we're doing. The state school board endorses us. The legislature, both the House and the Senate, gave us a commendation last year for our United We Pledge program called Give Me Liberty. School teachers are underpaid, overworked, and they have so much to do that they just, being a teacher, again, as one of them for a large part of my career, I totally get their life.
Yeah, my parents were teachers growing up, so they both taught until my dad got into entrepreneurship, but I was in like 6th grade when that happened, so they were both teachers for most of my childhood.
Yeah, so you get it.
Yeah.
And we want to help them. So our nonprofit is designed to provide supplemental material for teachers, specifically in civics and history. Those are two studies that are showing lower scores nationwide than ever before in our state. There's a civics crisis. Youth don't know what Independence Day is about. Youth don't know a lot. By the time we have people tearing down statues and not standing for the flag, it just creates this culture where youth need to deserve history. I read a quote by a guy named Baal Shem Tov while I was touring in the Holocaust Museum in D.C. The last quote as you walk out the door, Baal Shem Tov said, "Forgetfulness leads to exile, while remembrance brings redemption." We have to remember our past to learn from our mistakes and to grow off of it, right? So this education piece, especially civics and history, cannot be forgotten or lost.
There's a really interesting story about the Holocaust Museum and how they started. Do you know that story?
No.
So they wouldn't talk about it. So like survivors refuse. So even like their kids didn't know. And there was this group of survivors in LA, and they thought, like, let's get together and share like our shared experience, because they wouldn't speak to about their kids or anyone. Like they literally didn't talk about it. And then so they got together and they were like, well, I have all this stuff that I don't want in my house anymore, but like I also can't get rid of it. So what if we put it somewhere? So then they had it in like I can't remember where in LA, but they had like a showing of the stuff, and then it turned into the museum. And that's kind of where it started. And even you talk about education and how important it is to educate people. Americans didn't really know about it. And then they made a TV show called The Holocaust. That was like a 4-part show. And if you search the word Holocaust in like the digital library of the world, it never even showed up in almost anywhere until this TV show came out, because that's when Americans used to all get around the TV at the same time. There wasn't TVR, so you sat down and you watched it. And that was the start of when the word even just started to show up. And now, like the Holocaust Museum in DC, without that small group of people who talked about it and shared their story and brought their stuff together as like just a small little event, turned into what is now all the Holocaust museums around the world. And without that TV show, Americans, that was the start of like, oh, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's in Malcolm Gladwell's books, newest book, Revision to, not Outliers, to Think, maybe. Great book. And it was a fascinating story because I didn't know that, because I only knew it to know it, Sure. And so to hear that there was this time, and the reason I say that is because it shows what will happen if you don't talk about it.
That's exactly right.
If you don't talk about it, it will literally vanish, even though it's true. And so you have to be willing to have that conversation. And the second thing that I thought about that was really cool, I don't know if my son is doing this maybe.
What grade's he in?
He's 8, so he's in 2nd grade.
Yeah, so our program is a 5th grade program where in the core curriculum for Utah schools, that's civics and history, kind of the start of it in 5th grade. Now we do have we have a bus, right, a mobile exhibit that we take to school. So there would be some 2nd graders who would see that. There'd be some bleed over for what we call the Give Me Liberty program. So it wouldn't be unusual for a 2nd grader to kind of see peripheral that. But our sweet spot is 5th grade. And then we're expanding out to 8th grade in some ways that are really cool too. And eventually, hopefully 12th grade.
So we're sitting there at dinner. This is 2 weeks ago. So it's me, my son, my daughter, my sister, her boyfriend, and my mom and her husband. And I don't remember how it came up, but somehow it was about Trump being the 47th president and also the 45th. And then we're talking about like, well, who who was this number? And then my son is like, well, this president was number one, and this is the third president, this is the fifth president. And then he told me, because I thought Trump was the first one to be 45 and 47 because it wasn't consecutive.
Yeah.
But then there was another one, Grover maybe.
Oh.
And he was like, oh, my son said he's the 22nd and the 24th. And then he was telling me about the other. And I didn't realize that. I knew that obviously Lincoln was assassinated, but there was attempted assassination on Grover, I think, too. And so my son was telling me all this stuff. And I was like, this is incredible that he knows all this, because here's all these adults in the room and he's educating all of us because he's obviously going through that process of learning. And they have this insatiable desire for the knowledge, but you just got to have a place to provide it to them.
Yeah, I love that. So, and that's really what drives us, right? That the importance of having youth feel it and see it and be driven by it. And with that, then they can start, like we talked about early, they can start to make their own decisions and formulate their worldview and know what they want to be a part of and where they want to go. But all of that has to be foundationally, laced with education, understanding of verifiable, actual historical facts.
Well, yeah. And then, so we're watching The Patriot, and then he loves questions. So he says, do all soldiers go to hell? I said, well, I don't know. Why do you think that? And he said, well, I mean, if they're killing other people, then do they all have to go to hell? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, but I'd imagine if you're in the course of natural battle, that's one thing. But remember the redcoats, how they murdered people who were innocent civilians? Well, I would think that's different. That's murder. It's not battle. And I said, so I don't know the rules, but that would be my interpretation. And so it's just by even having these conversations, then we're getting into these thought episodes that would otherwise never take place. Like that's not a conversation we would have normally had over the course of a regular day.
So that's where United We Pledge is kind of evolved to, right? Start off with celebrations, knowing we want to educate. So now we're a supplemental educational, nonprofit for school teachers, fifth grades in particular. And we take into fifth grade schools what we would call a awards program. So because schools can be watered down with all there is to do, you just can't fit all the curriculum pieces.
Yeah.
We've said, for example, okay, here's a workbook for every fifth grader in Washington County. It's got lots of different things that you can do at home with your families on your own time, extra credit. It would be things like memorize the 50 states and their capitals, learn the presidents in order, learn the Gettysburg Address, learn the preamble to the Constitution, all that kind of basic stuff.
Yeah, because they stopped teaching it. Because that was another conversation we had. No one in the room knew any capitals.
Yeah.
Because it's like, my sisters especially, they're 10 and 12 years younger than me. They were never taught it. Like they never had to learn it. So they didn't.
But in some ways, some would argue, well, you can just Google it. If you need to know a capital, then just ask Siri,
Sure.
right? We live in this world where information is so rich. But what's not so rich are the application of the principles of what that means, how we draw on that. There's not value just so you know the name of a state and a capital, but there's value at knowing why is it organized that way and what does that mean? How does it affect my life?
Yeah.
So our awards booklet also includes things like interview a veteran and ask them about their experience, why they served. Interview an elected official. What do they think the biggest problems in your community are?
Well,
ask your mom and dad who they voted for and why. And it's that kind of thing for fifth graders that
to open that up dialogue.
Yeah, it's really great.
It's interesting to even talk about the veteran thing, because now that we as Americans are so removed from war, right? I remember growing up, and there was a family that I took care of their cat when they were gone, and he was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and he had his prison number in his wrist, And so it's like that was a very interesting and like a core memory of my childhood, having that conversation with him. But my son hasn't had the opportunity to talk to a veteran. So obviously you have a certain pride when you know, like, man, this guy was a prisoner in war for us, and now here he is living his life. But my son hasn't encountered that yet. Anyone who's got a story like he does.
The Vernon Worthen Park?
Yeah. Vernon
Worthen was one of my neighbors as a kid.
Oh, wow.
He walked me to Judd's store on occasion just to buy me a candy. He was one of the nicest. And as a kid, I had no idea who he was, right? But anybody who's so iconic that a city wants to name a park after him,
right? He's
got to be something more spectacular than this little, 7, 8-year-old kid knows. But he asked me to say the Pledge of Allegiance at a community event on the 4th of July. Same way. It just changed. I felt something that I'd never had felt stirred in my soul when I was My mom made me practice in front of the mirror, the
Yeah.
Pledge of Allegiance, so I wouldn't mess up. But then doing it that day around a group of people, it was so cool.
Well, and even I grew up here, or I didn't grow up here, but I moved here my sophomore year of high school. I didn't even know that was named after a person.
Yeah.
I didn't know what Worthen was. I just knew it was a park.
He was a really delightful man who made an impact for good in this city.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, so our 5th grade program is this awards program. And then, of course, if the kids passed off on a bronze, silver, or gold level, then we give them all kinds of prizes, the pizzas and the T-shirts and the medals and the certificates. So we motivate them. And it's a good thing for teachers because it helps their students elevate their education on their own. It's supplemental, so it doesn't take up a lot of extra class time. It's a really good program. And that's what we do at United We Pledge particularly. We had a bus donated to us by Findlay, so we outfitted the bus with TVs and iPads. It's now a mobile exhibit. We have 2 actors who guide groups of 6 or 8 kids through a time at the bus that talks about the Declaration, Constitution, and Bill of Rights. It's a mobile exhibit that you would have seen around the community, and it goes to schools and homes and campuses and events. It's really awesome.
Let me ask you a quick question, because you said earlier that you're non-denominational and it's not a political party, right?
Right.
And you said some people don't really believe that. Why do you think it is that they don't believe that?
Maybe some of our donors are more naturally conservative. Maybe because we're founded in Washington County, that's a very conservative county.
Yeah.
Maybe because many of us are of a particular political persuasion. They see all of us and go, well, that's what you've got to be. Here's a story. Steve James, the sports reporter for KUTV.
Uh-huh.
So he came down to our gala last year when we were unveiling the bus, right? We had it inside the Washington County Fairgrounds. There's a big building there, Grafton building or something. So we pulled this bus in, we cover it with a sheet, and at the end of the gala, we're going to pull it off, and Steve James is there, doing this television interview or whatever for this big gala event. He said, we took some bets up at KUTV that when you pull the thing off the bus, that it's going to be red, white, and blue flags and a bunch of white males, and some bald eagles or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you need to, I can't wait to see when we pull off this bus, because it's got as many females on it. It has an African-American slave who was the first poetess in America. This is not a denominational nor a partisan thing. This is helping kids fall in love with American history and fall in love with our nation and who we are. But it's just, one of the places we're building at Liberty Village, and how I'm rambling and getting off, I'm sorry, but one of the homes that we're building first is the replica of the Elizabeth Powell home. And one of the reasons we're doing it is because we say founding fathers, and some people don't even know that women played such a critical role in the history of this nation. We talk about the Sons of Liberty. Well, there were daughters of liberty.
Yeah.
Right? There were women who made such an important impact in this nation. Those are when I say accurate, historically verifiable, those are the kind of things we need to do. So we pull this sheet off the bus, and it's pink and green. It's got some cool, vibrant colors that we think really relate to 5th graders. But yes, we are all in on the nonpartisan, non-denominational.
I think that's so important, just because you lose a part of your audience if they feel like it's one way or the other.
Yeah.
And American history is for all of us.
Declaration, Constitution, and Bill of Rights, like the flag, shouldn't cause anyone to
feel a certain way.
It's like those
other than proud.
Yeah, those are our documents. That's what gives us the structure we have that preserves our freedoms and our liberties. And then the only other thing we add is we take into schools actors and actresses so that kids can, have a conversation with George Washington during class. They can pull and print their own
copy. And that's a part of like what Liberty Village would be, right? You're going to have those historical actors to like recreate some of the.
So United We Pledge is, call it Liberty Village on the Road, right? Or our outreach program to schools, and then Liberty Village will be the destination. But that's why we started with United We Pledge, is because that's how the organization started. Celebrations and education was so important to us. And then we also wanted to build this destination. So we've always talked in terms of education, destination, and celebration.
And now I feel like we can transition to Liberty Village. The goal for phase 1 is it still September of this year?
Oh, phase one will be done before that.
Oh, it
sure.
will be.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go out to Liberty Village now, they're pouring all the concrete pads are done for the first 3 pavilions and the clock tower, which is a replica of Independence Hall in Philadelphia. The Liberty Bell will rest under that clock tower.
Wow.
The parking lot and the restroom. So phase one is all the infrastructure and then just the basic outdoor buildings, the pavilions and those kinds of things. That will be, I'm going to call that done by, May-ish at the latest.
Wow.
Yeah, it's close. If you go out there, there's, probably not today, maybe because of the rain, but generally there's 25 or 50 workers out there. It's a construction hub right now. We will have, there's 3 critical dates. We're setting our first statue at Liberty Village on April 19th to the 250th anniversary of the shot heard around the world. We're setting the Liberty Bell on campus on June 7th. That's when it was set in Philadelphia, so we've chosen that date to set it at Liberty Village. And then we're doing a ribbon cutting in September on September 17th, which is Constitution Day. So we choose all these patriotic celebrations and events like we've always done to make sure that what we do is in line with some of those great historical dates.
So then let's get into Liberty Village. When Liberty Village is at its full... It's going in the full capacity. What can people come to expect from that, and what will it be like?
Full capacity will be 32 acres with 21 replica buildings, iconic buildings from America's history built to scale.
That's cool.
On a 32-acre campus, it means we're going to have buildings like Independence Hall, Mount Vernon, Monticello, St. John's Church, the Green Dragon Tavern, Isaiah Thomas Print Shop, the 16-sided barn, from Mount Vernon, Plymouth Rock, and the Plymouth Experience. It will include indigenous peoples, exhibits about that part of American history that can't be forgotten either. Right?
Yeah, of course.
It's a difficult topic for some to kind of navigate through, but we're not going to avoid difficult topics. We have to tell the story of America, not just the.
You need that for credibility too, right? Because if you're not going to talk about those things, then it gives you less credibility to the other things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So all of that is part of that campus. Now, we are not a historical site. We're not on the National Historic Register. We do not have to have a member of the National Park Service be the official guide through our site because let's call our version of the Green Dragon.
That's better.
I think it's way better.
Yeah, you don't want to have the government bureaucracies jamming you up on stuff.
So think of our version of the Green Dragon Tavern, right? That's where the Sons of Liberty planned the Revolutionary War. It's where the Boston Tea Party was planned. It's where Paul Revere, kind of the starting point, so to speak, for his midnight ride. And he wasn't alone in that ride. William Dawes and lots of other horsemen, were going through.
So as an example would be like a Paul Revere actor would be there on a horse, and you could see that experience.
So that building is not the official Green Dragon Tavern. So we don't need to walk anyone in the building and say, here's where Washington slept or here's where the table Revere sat at. If this were back in Boston, they may have that obligation.
Yeah.
But all we're doing is building replica buildings as a canvas for teaching. Right?
And storytelling.
So think about this great brick and mortar location where it feels like the blend of Boston and Philadelphia and Richmond, all of those kind of on one campus.
That's what's so cool about going back east is the history that's there.
That's right. It's not about the building.
Yeah.
It's about what happened inside the building and the history there. So we get the advantage of having a shell that's a replica, but we can open the door and inside can be Disneyland.
Yeah.
We can use AI. We can use technology. We can use screens and experiences. We can have kids print on printing presses. We can have them have hands-on learning. We can have lectures and musicals and surround sound theaters, and we can do theater in the round. We can do all of those things inside the doors of Liberty Village. But when you step on the campus, you're like, I'm in the 1700s.
Yeah.
Then you open the door and it's like, no, let's make history fun. Let's make America exciting. Let's have this kind of experiential learning that's so critical in today's world for kids to really get it, feel it, love it. So for lack of a better term, we've called it a themed park. No roller coasters, but a themed park focused on the American story and American history, specifically Declaration, Constitution, and Bill of Rights.
And do you anticipate this being like a tourist-driven economy where people are going to come out on their own accord to experience this, or is this like we're bringing schools and they're doing field trips here, or is it a mixture of both? How do you anticipate people experiencing it?
All of the above.
Yeah.
So our educational platforms are designed for different groups. When we open, we'll have a soft opening in June. On June 7th, when we set the Liberty Bell, that will be the official soft opening of Liberty Village with a ribbon cutting on September 17th. But you'll be able to access the campus even before that soft opening, right?
And I think I talked to Rod a little bit about this, but are you guys going to have a hospitality component so people can come and like stay overnight and experience it over the course of a couple of days, or is it just you come for a little bit and then leave?
Come for a little bit and then leave.
Okay.
We're in the education business. We want to be to education in Washington County what Tuacahn is to entertainment.
Okay.
Will we have food services on campus? Certainly. Do I hope to find the right restaurateur or entrepreneur who says, I want to do the food services at Liberty Village? We'd say, great, yeah. That's something that we would like to outsource rather than...
Yeah, you don't want to run the restaurant.
Yeah. And same way, I don't want to run the hotels, but there's plenty of hotel entrepreneurs and other, facilities nearby where I think that will help push our guests there, create some, relationships so that there's some benefits of our guests having some connections with some opportunities with local.
What amazing thing for kids in Washington County that they get this in their backyard.
Sure. Yeah. Washington County was named after George Washington. If you didn't know that Vernon Worthen Park was named after Mr. Worthen.
I didn't know that either, that Washington County was named after George Washington.
Yeah, so Washington County is named after George Washington. Our county commissioners just a couple of years ago made a proclamation that this would be known as America's County. We're ahead of the curve in celebrating America's 250th anniversary. Liberty.
Yeah, I had a note about that because I saw that you guys want to, work in conjunction with that in celebration.
Absolutely. Yeah, we support the national committee. Trump just created a task force for America 250 as well. We support that group. There's a state 250 committee. We're working hand in hand with all of those folks. You only get kind of maybe 2 times in your lifetime, right? I was here in 1976 for the bicentennial. I'm still now around for the semi-quincentennial. But it's not very many times in a lifetime where you get a real national focus.
And that's during the Olympics too, right? The Olympics are taking place during that same year.
2026.
Yeah, in LA. So it's like we also get to celebrate the Olympics in America again, which is cool. And then it doesn't align with that, but for Utah, we're going to get the Winter Olympics in 2030, which is just amazing. We're the only Olympic venue that is still in operation after the Olympics ever.
Really?
Yeah. All the other ones, like if you go to Brazil and you look at their Olympic venues, it looks like a war zone, like a third world country. It's just all grown in, agriculture's taken over. It's like the stadiums they built, arenas, they're all just completely dilapidated. Salt Lake is the only city that still has their Olympic venues in operation after Olympics.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Utah does stuff well. That's why we got it back, and we're going to be able to reuse the same stuff. No one else has ever been able to do that before.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, this was a fascinating conversation. I love to hear it. I feel like we're on the right path as a whole. Like I feel like things are changing and we're moving in the right direction. And it's fun to watch my kids experience that now and to hear them talking about their presidents and to hear them talking about America and to be interested in like watching a movie like The Patriot. It's all exciting because that's how I grew up feeling, and I don't even know how we ever got off track like we did. But it feels good that I think we're getting back on track.
Can I give you one other tidbit of something we think is a very cool project we're involved in? We approached Angel Studios. They did The Chosen.
Oh yeah,
You're familiar with that? And
they did the Freedom Project too.
Yeah. But there's a gentleman named John Irwin who has written and produced shows like American Underdog and I Can Only Imagine. He just did a deal with Amazon, I think, that's launching House of David. It's coming out on Amazon. Anyway, he's a real talented writer. So the script has been drafted and is ready to go, and I think right now they're looking for casting for Young Washington. But we anticipate launching in theaters, hopefully nationwide, cross our fingers, a Young Washington movie on July 4th, 2026 as part of America 250, and then following it with a multi-season television series.
And that you guys are part of that too then?
So we have a small equity interest in that from Liberty Village's perspective, but some groups out of LA, Salt Lake are kind of helping that come together, but we really are uber supportive of that. We've made announcements at some galas and some other places. We've given some tickets out for, premiere showings. But we think that kids need to just learn about our history. And if we can do it through an outreach school program, a brick and mortar campus, movies in theater, anything that we can do. And we're supportive of any other 501c3 or any other nonprofit that's doing good things for this nation. We want to lend our voice of support to help them in any way we can.
Well, I mean, I talked about the impact of that TV series, The Holocaust, and how that shifted the way that history remembered that. And I had to look it up so I didn't get it wrong. So the book is Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And there's a chapter about the history of the Holocaust and how that came to be known, because the book is all about tipping points, what happens in the course of our lives where something tips, right? And it shifts. And so that was the example he gave. So if you're interested in that, The Revenge of the Tipping Point. It was fascinating. But to that point, by having that TV series, it captivated America. So if we can tell stories in a digital way that's entertaining to kids, I mean, my son couldn't have loved watching The Patriot more. That's like a 3-hour-long movie. And it's old. It's from like 1997 or something. So it doesn't look like today's movies. And yet he was just absolutely riveted and fascinated to learn all about it. So I think the more digital storytelling we can do, the better we're going to be.
You're in charge of this show.
No, you're right. You're right on. We're right here. We're right here at 60 Minutes.
But I'll tell you, if I could choose for our children to have heroes, I'd rather not have them have heroes that do impossible things like shoot spider webs out of their palms. Right?
Yeah.
Why don't we choose heroes, men and women in this nation, who really did heroic things?
Absolutely.
Normal people. And look in the mirror. You and I are imperfect. We have our flaws. So did they. We shouldn't be.
That's what's really sad about the revisionist history. It's like, and also the historical relevance, the decisions they made at the time were the norm.
Yeah.
So that would be like someone being upset with me because I'm doing something on my phone, but it's like, well, no, that's just what this time it is.
It was the culture of the day.
Right. And so I hate to see that we've had so much revisionist history calling these people evil for these things that they did, when that is how the world operated at the time.
And those folks, from my perspective, are heroic, who set foundation in place so that I can enjoy the life that I do and the freedoms that I enjoy. I think we stand on the shoulders of giants in this nation, candidly. Imperfect giants, okay, but still giants and heroic. I'd love our children and grandchildren to grow up knowing that they ought to become great citizens, that they ought to choose to follow whatever dream they want to and become the heroes that they dream. I mean, you've written books. You're lecturing across the nation. You've chosen with your life to do something heroic and magical that people ought to look at and not envy, but with adoration say, thank you for who you are and what you've done in this place we live where that's possible.
Yeah.
And that's the story of America. I don't think the story of America is over.
We're writing it right now.
We're writing it right now.
Absolutely.
And that's why United We Pledge and Libertyville exists, because we want youth to write the most magical future story of America that's possible.
Well, I think another thing about the heroes, and you're going to know better than me, but if I remember right, a good portion of the gentlemen who signed the Declaration of Independence were like young. They were in their 20s, weren't they?
Not all of them, but the average age is certainly younger than you imagine. You imagine these
whiteheads,
old men, sitting around a room. But no, it's a group of relatively young people, and some of them especially young, who are saying we're going to stand up for our freedoms. We're going to stand up for our families, because they had come. Remember, they came from this background where empirical, tyrannical rule of an elite ruling class was all that would be. If you weren't born with the right last name or with the right bloodline, they couldn't have done anything.
Yeah, that's what I love about today, and I think people still. I think there's a belief that exists in America, and to some extent, that's certainly true. There's certain pathways that are easier, but at the end of the day, you can. I mean, even like I love Vivek Ramaswamy. I thought he would have been awesome. I just love the way that his mind thinks, and you look at him, and it's like here is an Indian immigrant who's become a billionaire. It's like does that not tell you how amazing the times are? You know, like you can truly do anything. And even J.D. Vance, like him or don't like him, he grew up in the Appalachian Mountains with a drug addict of a mother, no father, living in poverty with his grandmother, and went to, I think it was Harvard he graduated from, and is now the vice president. That is why America's so cool. There's no way that little young J.D. Vance ever could have imagined in his wildest dreams that he would end up the vice president of America. And by no means is he a last name social elite. He grew up in poverty.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it is truly remarkable. And I think when you have someone like that become vice president, it's so empowering to the youth of America, because now another poor child in any part of America can see that and say, I'm not preordained to struggle.
Yeah.
Based on the choices and the beliefs that I make, I can truly become anything.
How many people you think want to immigrate to this country? That ought to tell us something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That's all you need to know. Well, I think this was awesome. Dennis, thank you so much. What a good, spirited conversation. For people who are listening, if they want to get involved, if you've inspired them to help contribute to United We Pledge, or they want to learn more about Liberty Village, what are the best places for them to go for that?
libertyvillage.org. We'd love to see as we open, if nothing else, come and visit and kind of see who we are as we grow up into this, full master plan campus. Or unitedwepledge.org. If, local education for elementary and middle schools is important to you, you can learn about what we're doing at either of those two websites.
Okay, well, that's perfect. I will make sure those websites are down in the show notes. So if you're looking and you want to help support this incredible program, you can do so. I'll also put the link for Malcolm Gladwell's book, Tipping Point, if you want to get more information on that. Dennis, this was a pleasure. That time absolutely flew by. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and coming and chat with me.
Thanks so much. Take care.